Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. Here we are in the last week of March. Every time I do my last podcast for the month, it just reminds me how quickly time goes by. We are wrapping up Women's History Month, and we have been honoring and celebrating things that women experience, but also that other people can utilize as well. But these definitely have been dedicated to things that women go through, and today is no exception. So I want to end this podcast series for this month talking about a few of the things. So I'm going to kind of wrap a few things in this last episode. It'll be a wee bit of a catch all because there's no way to cover everything, but I definitely want to make sure I end with these few things. So, one is going to be women having difficulty being able to ask for help. Two, women having difficulty being able to focus on themselves and self care without thinking that it's selfish. And three, women being able to affirm themselves, particularly when there has been something that has happened that has been negative in their lives. It's a lot, but I'm going to try to be a good steward of your time. So let's talk about difficulty asking for help. Oftentimes, we are socialized as women to provide help, to be the caregivers, to be the nurturers, to be the supporters, which is truthfully why we end up getting in a lot of the relationships that we end up in. And that may be romantic relationships, it could be coworker relationships, friendships, the roles we take on in church, in our organizations that we're a part of, because we want to support other people. We have been taught that supporting other people sometimes is even more of a value than taking care of yourself, which is again why a lot of times we feel like self care is selfishness because we've been socialized to be other focused, to prioritize other people, to prioritize our partners and our children, to prioritize our work, to show up for other people, not to let other people down. Those educators, when you've made a commitment, you follow through with your commitment. And because I think oftentimes we are measured by virtue of how we engage with, interact with, and produce for other people, it can be very difficult for us to even be able to ask for help. And one of the reasons is because maybe we've asked for help in the past and that help hasn't been given to us. People have disappointed us, they haven't shown up for us, or when they have given us help, they have thrown it back in our face later on, or it's come with a cost. And so, what we've learned to do is, I'll figure it out on my own. I hear a lot of women say that I'm not going to ask anybody for help. I'll figure it out on my own. In fact, I will be dying on my deathbed and not ask anyone for help. And there are particular people we don't like to ask for help. So for some people, that's definitely family members, parents, maybe. They will not think that I failed and that I'm coming back asking them for anything. All of the other kids have come back home. I'm not coming back home. It might be former partners, it might be current partners, because some of us, unfortunately, are in situations where we don't even feel like we can ask our partners for help. Maybe it's the children. I'm not going to be asking my children for help. I'm their parent. They don't need to be supporting me in any kind of way. So I'm not going to ask them for assistance, even if it's not financial assistance, because I understand that there are a lot of parents that are like, hey, you have been raised to, so you have your own life, you do your things, you shouldn't be taking care of me. And whereas to an extent that's true, like you absolutely can get a ride to the doctor from your children, or if you're going to have a surgical procedure and you need some support, you need to let them know, right? We keep so many things from people because we don't want to be a burden to them. We don't want to stress them out. And often, what you'll hear people say is they're quite offended when we don't let them know when we have struggles because they want to be able to support us. But the other thing about it is, for some of us, we feel like to ask for help is weakness. That it means that I'm less than, that I'm inadequate. Some of us even will equate it to almost like the walk of shame, if you will. Like, oh goodness, I would never let anybody know I needed help. They're not going to see me sweat. They're not going to know that I go through things, i.e., they won't know that I'm a human being. And part of that is because we feel like people will exploit that if they see it as a weakness, and that will be forever viewed in their eyes in some kind of negative way as less than or inadequate. And honestly, that difficulty being able to accept help does go down to a deeper issues, often sometimes around our self-worth and what it would mean to us if we ask for help. And so because we're struggling with our worth, we don't really feel like we can ask for help, right? And so that leads to this other piece of not being able to take time for self care because, again, I value other people. And some of that is because we are encouraged to be nurturers. We are frequently given dolls in kitchens growing up. And whereas I do appreciate that you can go to any daycare now for the most part and see kids playing with a variety of different things, like we get to play with the Legos and the Tonka trucks too. Oftentimes, it is very much like, oh, that's what girls do, right? So we still have a lot of these gender norms and biases that are present in these gender stereotype behaviors about who we can be and cannot be. And one of the roles that we've been told that we are nurturers, which is why so many women struggle when they're not nurturers, when they don't want children, when they're not necessarily people that want to get married, when they're not people that are easily able to express emotion or connect with people emotionally. Then people think they're odd or they're weird. Like, what's wrong with you? And we'll frequently say you act like a dude, right? Which again lends itself to this stereotype about who women are. And so, as nurturers, oftentimes we are in that position of feeling like I can't take a day off. I can't focus on myself because if I do, that means something won't get done, or that may mean someone will measure me and say that I'm inadequate. Like, oh, look at that mama. Here she is taking a spa day, going on a trip without her kids. You know, her kids young. Why would she leave home? I never left my kids home that age. She's not a good parent, and so we worry a lot. We have all this mother guilt about what it means to show up for people in our families. And if you're that person in the family who's the dependable one or the responsible one, maybe you're the person that is the most educated in the family and most knowledgeable about different things, or the person who people feel like has really achieved, then people are coming to you with the expectation that you'll be able to be there to support them. And when we don't, we feel like we're disappointing people and we're letting them down. And that in some way we'll be responsible if something happens to them. When that friend calls us, if we're not available for them, when they call back to back to back or text back to back to back, like, oh, it must be an emergency, so I attend to them. Or I've told you that I'm resting, but you're calling me anyway, so you must really need me. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling me. Like, we automatically go to this place of, no, surely people will be looking out for me and they're thinking about me. So when they do call me, I should be readily available for them. And then when that's not the case, we're frustrated and disappointed because we continuously are in this place of taking care of other people, but they don't take care of us, and vice versa. Like, it's hard for me to actually go somewhere and focus on myself without thinking about other people. Well, like, what if I put my phone on do not disturb and people can't reach me if something happens? Because we will tell ourselves, like, oh, if I miss out, then I'm responsible. Or we have that fear of missing out. Like, what if it's something that, maybe I really need to know? Because we're so afraid that we'll be rejected or disconnected from the family, we'll be abandoned, people will leave us if we're not available to them. So that means we sometimes struggle to be available to ourselves. And frankly, like, honestly, for some of us, it's easier to focus on other people. It's easier for me to make sure that you're okay instead of me actually thinking about what I need and addressing maybe some of the things that I struggle with. We know that avoidance, there is an adorable meme. I love it so much. There's this woman vacuuming desert in the sand, and it talks about, like, when I am trying to avoid, I can find all kinds of things to do to avoid. And I think that's how some of us women are with our self-care. I will avoid so much taking care of myself because, again, what does that mean if I take care of me? That means I have to really take a look at what's going on with me and understand why I'm tired and not just be dismissive of it. Understand that maybe I'm not doing all of the things I could to nurture all of the aspects of my identity and self, and that I'm feeling like I have to only focus on being a mom or a wife or whatever role somebody has typecast me in, and I'm not allowed to actually do these things that give me passion or excitement or dreams. I have to defer them, put them on hold. Maybe that's not something that I'm able to do. I'm supporting other people first. I'll get to me eventually. Then I get quietly resentful because I haven't actually been able to get to me, but I'm the person responsible for not getting to me because I actually don't know how to invest in myself. And sometimes we feel like investment in ourselves will fail. And so if I never invest in myself, I can't fail. So then I don't have to really talk about whether or not I was able to do it. Because the truth is, some of us aren't confident in our abilities. We know that there are things that we're purposed to do, that we're gifted to do, but we're concerned about whether or not we'll actually be able to execute them. So if I don't focus on myself, I don't really have to worry about that. It's easy for me to make the excuse of, yeah, I want you to be a healthier person, but that doesn't actually relate to me. That I want you to be in healthier relationships, but that doesn't actually relate to me. I want you to take good care of your body, but that doesn't actually relate to me because sometimes I don't even feel like I deserve it. And some of us are really struggling with how we see ourselves. And oftentimes, in this very distorted sense of self, this very fragmented sense of self, that I don't actually sometimes even feel like a real person. I feel like this person who has these characteristics or these identities that are based on my relationship to other people or things and not actually as an integrated self. So we really struggle with that. And then I think it feels selfish to us too, because we might have grown up seeing women who just sacrificed. And they might have made it feel like they liked it, or you might have seen them be very resentful for it. And so, either way, we internalize this message of, okay, to be a woman means to be someone who sacrifices. I have a podcast episode entitled, essentially, is it sacrifice or is it suffering? And I will frequently say that women, we're so used to suffering, we don't even really know we're suffering because we've normalized that as a part of life. That, okay, well, if something good happens, then clearly something bad is going to be showing up behind that. And so I might as well just go ahead and expect that it's going to happen. And sometimes we will create opportunities for bad things to happen because we're just so uncomfortable sitting in spaces where there isn't chaos. And some of us, that we're dealing with growing up in families that are chaotic, where we've had to take care of people. You may be a child of parents who had addictions, and so you functioned in that caregiver role throughout your life. Or maybe you're a sibling that took care of people, or maybe there was an elderly loved one that came and lived with you all that you took care of. Maybe you are in a position where there was someone with special needs in your family and you're responsible for them, right? So all of these things that we're carrying with us in terms of our identity, and some of us don't see ourselves outside of the identity of supporting other people. And so it feels selfish if I'm not supporting someone else. One of my clients frequently tells me, like, I mean, it's a kind of a waste of existence if I'm not doing something for other people, because what does that say about me? What, I'm just here taking care of myself. There isn't anything that I need to be celebrating about that, right? So I think we even struggle with this notion of what it means to focus on ourselves. And if focusing on me is something that's taken away from other people, is preventing me from doing other things, then I'm doing a disservice. And some of us feel like God would not be pleased with us if we actually are focusing on ourselves and taking care of ourselves. That we feel like that is blasphemy, if you will, that we're not in service to someone, because service is something that is the priority, even if I have to sacrifice myself in that process. And I definitely think that for a lot of women, the affirmations piece is very hard if I don't even see myself as of value. I give affirmations as homework quite a bit in therapy, and my clients do not like to do affirmations because they do not believe them to be true. They struggle, and this is part of that distortion piece I was talking to you a little bit about last week, where we're talking about kind of anxiety and how we ruminate, is because in my mind, I truly don't believe I deserve to be able to be taken care of, to be able to take care of and affirm myself, to be able to take some time away and invest in myself, to be able to receive that help. And so I struggle with being able to affirm myself because I don't believe there's truly anything to affirm. And oftentimes, of course, that's built on maybe there has been some failures. Maybe there were people in my life that were very critical of me. Maybe I have had a setback in life and I feel like I'm starting over, but I'm constantly starting over as if like I'd never quite mastered life. Like a lot of people think, well, if I haven't figured out by this point, clearly it's me and I'm not going to figure out. So I'm the issue. And that can be with regard to a lot of things. That could be partnership, that could be finances, that could be a home, that could be family relationships, that could be job or career advancement. Because again, for a lot of us, we dictate our worth based on who we are to other people. And because of that, like if these areas feel out of balance and we do a lot of comparison behavior, then I don't feel adequate. and I feel insecure. Why do we say comparison is the thief of joy? Because it literally will rob you. It will have you really questioning, like, what am I even doing? Because at this point, I might as well just give up because I keep starting, stopping, but I'm not progressing and I'm not where this other person is. And I'm not going to be where this other person is because I don't have what they possess. And so, again, that spiral we get into our heads and really think about, like, you're just not worthy. And for so many women, we have those worth issues, those insecurities, the things that make us feel like there's just something about us that is unwhole and incomplete, like I'm broken and I won't be able to be repaired because I'm just so broken. And a lot of times that separates us from really even being able to see us as being loved by anyone, even God. And I think we think, well, God loves us unconditionally, but we don't actually necessarily believe that God loves us unconditionally because there's a part of us that may be angry with God and feeling like you set me up for failure because I keep going through all of this stuff. And I know that if you're God that you say you are, then you ought to be able to stop me from going through this. And because I'm going through it, clearly you don't think I'm worthy either, right? So you see this downward spiral. And so a lot of times for us, when we don't feel loved by the people who should have loved us, whether that was family members or those early friendships, or even feeling loved in our church families or in organizations or in settings where you felt like you saw other people being affirmed and valued, but you weren't. Some people didn't grow up being affirmed and valued. You were outcast. Maybe you were the person that no one asked out, or maybe you were the person that people asked out, but they objectified you and you never felt like a whole person. Or maybe you married the love of your life only for that marriage to end, or maybe there was a death or a loss, and you're like, okay, I've been clearly abandoned. And so we're all struggling with so what does that mean, self? Now, this wound that I still have that I don't feel like I can heal, how can I affirm and validate myself when I have this huge wound that I'm still dealing with that feels like it's gaping open for all of the world to see? So, what do we do about this, Tarver? It's interesting because I feel like throughout this month, I've been kind of talking to you about how to manage the ruminations and the distortions, and talking to you about how important it is to support women, to help women, to be present for women to feel like they have a community, that they're not in things by themselves. For us to be able to be in affirming and loving relationships, and for us to do things that give us value and meaning and purpose. And the truth is, all of those things are true. Like, this isn't any different in terms of what I will tell you to do. You know, you're going to get that good plug for therapy because some of us really need to work on some of the ways we see ourselves and or don't value ourselves, because of maybe internal messages that we're telling ourselves. And so, yeah, what I will tell you, what an easy, never easy, but the easiest thing to say about all of this is you're worth it. You deserve it. You matter. You're loved. You're capable. You're gifted. You are so much more than you even realize. You don't have to do anything to be loved and valued. You don't have to give anything. There doesn't have to be any bells and whistles. Like, you're enough in who you are. And who you are is not even necessarily connected to what you do and who you're related to or who you're in relationship with. Like, you're enough on your own simply because of who you are, and that you're here and you were purposed to be here for a reason, and that you have that value, and that even if you haven't figured it out just yet doesn't mean that you can't figure it out. And even though you've tried it multiple times and it doesn't work, doesn't mean that is not going to work. And it doesn't mean that you can't have the things that you deserve just because people that you've been with previously haven't been able to give them to you. And yes, you can absolutely not have to grow up and be the people with whom you grew up. So, yeah, all of that simply to say, you are all of the things that you desire to be within you. And she is trying to show up. She's trying to get out. She is trying to make herself known. But what she needs from you is permission, that it is okay for her to ask for help, that it is okay for her to take care of herself, and that she deserves those words of affirmation that she desires, longs, and needs to hear. Okay? Be well. And happy Women's History Month.